should just open our podcast with laughter. Like, it's just us laughing.
Yeah,
Don't
that
you
would
think?
be great.
Yeah. Let's do it. Let's live a little.
Ha ha ha! But it has to be like
overdone,
genuine. You know?
Oh, it has to be genuine. Okay,
or
it can't be like
just
staged.
overdone it. That would be kind of fun too. Just like fake laughing.
Fake laughing. They say that's good for you. Just like a little tidbit before we start. They say there are groups of people that get together just to laugh. And
I know, I've seen that.
Have we talked about this?
No, but I've seen it on the news.
Yeah,
It's bizarre looking.
It's so bizarre. But they say, because there was one in Duluth when I lived in Duluth forever ago. There was like an ad in the paper, like back when people would put ads in the paper.
Yeah.
There was an ad in the paper that said like Laughing Club, and it was just like you get together and laugh. And I wish I would have gone just to see what it was like. But apparently, laughter is contagious. So they just start laughing, and it's really good for you. I think.
Laughter is.
Right?
I just can't. And we did a whole thing on laughter.
Right. Right.
But I have a hard time forcing myself to laugh because it seems so disingenuous.
Okay,
You know?
well, we're going to do an experiment, maybe not recorded right now, but I am going to start laughing, and we'll see if it is as contagious, and you'll see if it's forced or if it's genuine.
I can't wait.
I know, right?
Yeah. You probably could make me laugh.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But you could not.
Oh, okay. Not just anyone.
Yeah.
Well, it is part of my powers. Today's episode is about my powers. See?
That would be good.
All right. Today's episode, though, actually is about, a few different words that mean the same thing.
Are we recording right now?
We're recording.
We are.
You didn't know?
I did not know that.
Oh,
That's great. Okay.
I know, yeah.
All right.
This is all going on the internet.
News I can use. Okay. All right.
Actually, I should just start when we sit down and start talking about recording. I should just start because we have so many good conversations.
We do.
Before I hit record.
We do. Just don't even tell me.
I won't.
Okay.
I'll never tell you again.
So what are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about compassion fatigue, also known as secondary trauma.
All right, that sounds boring. How can I relate to that?
I know, right?
Yeah.
So basically, I mean, you hear it most commonly, maybe you've heard it before, when it comes to people who work in the medical profession, people like therapists, emergency
first responders.
Yeah, first responders, because they see some gnarly stuff, they hear some gnarly stuff, right? But we were relating it to, I think anybody can have this.
Absolutely.
Right?
Well, like we were talking about, I'm sorry, I can't get over the fact that you used the word gnarly.
It's gnarly, bro.
It is totally like from the 80s where I grew up. So, but we do, as we were talking about this is so highly relatable. We didn't want to lead with secondary trauma and it just turned everybody off. But we realized there is secondary kind of trauma, compassion fatigue.
Yep.
And we all know what this is when you've got a family member who's going through a crisis or they've got cancer or chronic illness or they're going through a divorce and you're watching this unfold and you're sort of thinking, I'm watching a train wreck, you know, and there's nothing I can do. And that has an effect on all of us. Well,
that's exactly right. And I'm surprised that this topic is discussed mostly in the context of like first responders or therapists and stuff, because it's like, no. This is everybody. Because who doesn't know someone who just got in like a terrible car accident and now they have no vehicle. They may have like a whiplash injury, you know, they're like trying to figure out, can I go to work? You know, and it's like, you might be someone who's directly supporting them, or you might just be a close loved one. And you're like, what the heck do I do? Right.
Yeah. And it's excruciating, actually.
It is. It is.
To watch someone you really love and care about day after day.
Yep.
They're dealing with uncertainty. They're dealing with their life coming unraveled and undone.
Yep.
And you're seeing them go through this.
Yep.
And there's absolutely nothing you can do.
Right. And there's sometimes like, you know, you like, let's say someone you love has cancer. Right. And can't work and is, you know, going through treatments and stuff. You can like donate money on their GoFundMe.
Right.
But that's just a small, like, yes, of course, that's extremely helpful to them. But it's like, that doesn't help really, like in terms of feeling powerless.
It doesn't. And I think we've highlighted enough in past podcasts that We got to be careful with little anecdotal sort of things to help people.
Yes.
Because what we're really doing sometimes is we're trying to fix something that's not fixable for somebody else.
Correct.
And then we offer these cheap little kind of solutions.
Yep.
And it's very invalidating for the other person. And if we think about it, we're only doing it for ourselves because we're saying, your life is so excruciating. Yep. I can't handle watching this. So do this for me. And we don't even realize we're doing this for ourselves more than we are for the other person. And it really makes the person going through things feel extremely invalidated.
Right. It's almost like, I don't think people realize that they're being sort of flippant or being sort of cliche when they respond to things.
Yeah. And it trivializes other people's pain. So
Right.
I think we all know what this is because we've seen that. We've gone through it.
Yep.
And we've been on the recipient end of things where we're just hearing people tell us these little anecdotes. And maybe we've done it to other people. Mm-hmm. But we do want to highlight that this is very real. And it has an effect on people.
Well, and I think even more so like nowadays with social media, to be honest with you.
Oh,
and
yes.
I think that's both a good thing and a tough thing because on the one hand, you can stay up to date, like to the minute with what's going on with someone you love or even like a world crisis. And on the other hand, I've heard from others that sometimes it's like, I have to take a break from this. Like this is too much. Right. So, I think it's easier than ever to be overexposed to certain details.
Right. And I think there's kind of an urge.
Yep.
When we are the person watching somebody else go through immense chronic pain, whether it be physical or emotional, there's an urge to move toward the person. Of course. As we move toward that person, we become controlling and trying to offer cheap solutions. Or we move away from that person. Totally. So I think at funerals, that's a great example. People, I don't know what to say. And so like they just avoid that person because they don't know what to say. Or people go through a divorce and they don't know what to say. Yes. Do we invite this person over now that this person's single? And like, what do we do? And then there's this silence, and this radio silence really is invalidating for the person. So
we need the middle ground, don't we?
How do we stay close without moving toward and overpowering somebody with cheap solutions?
Yep.
And without moving farther away and alienating ourselves from somebody.
Well, and to that point, I think when you move close, even if you're not offering cheap solutions, sometimes it's too much for you, right? As the observer. Right. So maybe you have worked on your own boundaries enough where you're not doing the controlling thing and you're not doing the offering of cheap solutions. But I think even for your own self-preservation, like maybe I don't need to hear every day about, I had a friend who went through a horrible divorce recently, and I realized I couldn't receive daily updates from that person. Because it was like, it just kept getting more and more chaotic, and I wanted to help, but I realized like, maybe the way I help isn't by just hearing all these details every day. Right.
So what did you do?
So I took some breaks.
I can't believe you're so mean like that.
See, I know, right? Like even just saying it, I'm like, oh, I can't believe
I thought you were a nice person.
Right? Yeah, exactly. No, turns out I am stone cold.
And it does. It makes it hard because it feels like and I tell my clients this a lot, isn't it tragic when we actually practice self-care, it's so foreign to us that it feels like I'm being selfish.
Yes.
So tragic. Self-care is interpreted and understood to be selfish.
Yep. So back to your question of what did I do? First, I had to be aware that it was too much for me. So actually, maybe that's a good segue into what are like some of the signs and symptoms of this phenomenon. So
how did you know that it was getting to be too much for you?
I think, I listen to my intuition and my gut feeling a lot. Sometimes when the phone would ring, I would get this like visceral, like I would get a body response of like, oh, I don't want to answer.
Right.
So I had to pay attention to that. So I think just on the very like basic level, kind of listening to yourself, listening to your body.
In a non-judgmental way.
Correct.
Right. And just notice that, I don't feel like
answering the phone right now.
And a lot of times we'll say to ourselves, I can't believe, like, this person's really suffering, and I can't believe I have this response.
Well, there were times where I answered anyway, right?
Yes,
because I'm like, this person is, is close. Like, I really want to be there for them, and so I would answer anyway, and then I would be more drained, right? Over time, I had to start saying, okay, listen to yourself. When you get that little like, if the call comes in and I'm feeling good, or I'm like, okay, I want to answer, fine. But if the call comes in and I'm like, right? It's like, it's hard to describe that feeling. But so listening to that. But
non-judgmentally.
Right. Yeah. Right. Okay. But I think how to kind of translate that into a sign or a symptom would maybe be, I guess, irritability or feeling on edge.
Right. Or it's just you're that heart sinking feeling like,
right. Like I don't have the energy for this feeling.
Yeah.
Okay. So like lower energy, maybe.
Lower energy for sure. Avoidance.
Yeah.
Or even the urge to avoid. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yep. And that, again, it doesn't mean you have to avoid. Mm-hmm. But it's like, it's okay to check in with yourself and say, am I up for this right now? And sometimes it was just a matter of waiting till the next day and saying, hey, sending a text later and saying, hey, I saw you called, would love to catch up with you tomorrow, right? Or I have time at this, and this time. And that's another good boundary thing too, is like, you don't have to answer every call that comes in.
Yeah, so, and I think in a sense what we're talking about is that can develop into some anxiety then too. Mm-hmm. We get anxious when we see that person. So we don't only have the kind of our heart sinking, kind of this, dread. Yeah. It can turn into a little bit of hypervigilance for this person, like, oh no, they called. And it can also, for people that are really tied in, and there maybe are the hands-on caregiver day in and day out, it can become more like depressive symptoms.
Sure.
Like a real sense of ongoing fatigue.
Yes.
You're depleted.
Depleted, exactly.
Completely depleted, and you're not sleeping, or you're sleeping too much, and you just can't get enough energy, and just we call it kind of like an anhedonia. I just love dropping a big word, so I
know,
smart.
right? You're so smart.
Thank you. I think it's just that sense of I don't have a sense of pleasure and enjoyment in life,
right?
And it happens because I'm just so consumed by caring for this other person.
Right, exactly.
Or caring about, if I'm not the direct caregiver, I'm thinking about and caring about this person, a sibling, a parent, whatever, that's going through grief, that's going through medical problems, that's going through divorce, etc.
I want to share another piece of it because I think it'll be relatable too. So in this situation, another reason why I felt that way when the call would come in, or felt like stress about the phone call, is I didn't know when it was just a call to say hi and check in, and when it was like everything's like needing something urgently from me, right? So in the case of this situation, there were young kids involved, and like sometimes it was a call of like, I need your help, right? Yes. And so what do I do about that? So then I had to convey and communicate to this friend, like, when you reach out to me, it would help me a lot to know how urgent it is, kind of at the front end, because like, then I want to help if I can, right? If it's like, if I have the capacity to, but otherwise it's like, I need to know kind of what to expect. So I think that's something anyone can do if you have a loved one or a friend going through something and the call comes in and you're like, is this like the everything's on fire call? Or is this the like, hey, I'm just updating you or checking in? Sometimes if you tell them, can you just like maybe shoot a text and say, hey, it's urgent, or like, hey, can you pick up, right?
So you're setting boundaries again
with communication.
For yourself. Sometimes you don't have to respond.
Exactly. Even so, you don't have to. Yes,
and
exactly.
Again, without believing you're guilty of anything and feeling any sense of shame for doing that. I think what's hard. All right. So what would you say to this? Because I would imagine some people would have an objection and say, well, that it's not fair. They never get a break from their cancer treatment, from their MS, from their chronic pain. They never get a break. So who am I that I get a break? They never get to. So why should I?
Sure.
Any thoughts on that?
That's a great, I actually am really glad you brought that up, because in that situation, so if I'm as the friend who's in a supportive role, if I'm feeling like I'm their only go to and I'm the only way that this person gets a break, I would probably try to find a way in a non-crisis moment to talk to them about that and say, look, hey, I really want to be here for you. I've noticed that you often call me and I'm not sure who your other supports are, but can we talk about that? Because I want to be able to help out long term. I'm feeling a little bit like I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. Right? And so you can say that to somebody and say,
look. Are you sure? You can?
You can.
It seems so rude.
I know. It's, well, right, because it's like, I don't want to put another thing on them when they're going through this time. Right. But I think it's better they know that than, because what'll happen otherwise is people will ghost them.
Right. They'll ghost them because they start to get resentful.
Exactly.
Too. Right.
Yes. And so if I start to feel like I'm getting that resentful feeling, I might say, look, here is what I can offer you. Like, I want to set up, and I did this with my friend, as I said, can we set up a consistent thing? Like, can we set up I'll come over on Saturday mornings and I'll hang with your kids and you go do things you need to do instead of the like unexpected, right? Yes. So that's another thing you can do. Yeah. But basically, you have to communicate. It's like, if you want to help someone in the long term, you have to like be clear what you can do and what you can't do. Otherwise, the resentment kicks in. And then the tendency is to avoid, understandably.
Sure.
Right? And like, I can't handle this.
I think as we talk about boundaries, I just thought that an important note is for the person who's going through chronic pain, chronic medical conditions or divorce or whatever. It's good for us, for those of us that are going through that, to realize people around me, they need a break too. And if they're going to be my support, that it's okay for them to have breaks. They need it.
They need it.
And it's easy to say, well, this isn't fair and my life is unfair and
I never get a break.
I never get a break. Absolutely. And that sucks and you don't get a break. And if we want people to be able to be there for us, it's okay. And to maybe even help them proactively navigate that. And so, hey, please let me know, Christa, if I'm ever too much, and I want you to have that. I want you to take care of yourself as well. So that's something I think for those of us going through it to try to be proactive about.
I'm glad you mentioned that because there is a lot of being direct in like basically how do we sort of deal with this powerless feeling, right? Yes. Both for the person going through the crisis and the person who is supporting someone going through a crisis. It's kind of comes back to that powerless feeling, right? It's like so much is going on, so much feels out of my control. So it actually takes a lot of what are the ways I can take my power back? And one of them is to, like we were just saying, direct communication and say like, so again, if I'm the person going through a crisis, I can say to my loved ones, I am trusting you to tell me if there's ever something I'm asking of you that's too much, but you have to tell me, right? Like, can we make an agreement? Right. Like, can we make an agreement that I won't get upset with you, that, I won't, that you won't hide these things from me? Because this is, especially the longer term of a crisis it is. It's like we have to talk to each other.
Yeah, and I think about this in so many contexts. I think of people who are first responders, for people who are clergy, mental health providers. They need to be able to say this to their partners, their people in their life, and also their work environment needs to be sensitive to this. Police departments, I know from working with them, are becoming more and more aware of this need to be intentional about it. And it's really helpful for people to have a space at work where they can talk about what's going on and just download and be absolutely convinced this isn't going to reflect negatively on my work performance because this is getting to me.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. I think it's I've worked with some first responders too in therapy, and I think it's a point of pride sometimes that they can go from emergency to emergency and kind of not be fazed by it, more or less. Like, I've had someone say to me, like, I don't know why this one's just sticking with me. Like, usually I can move on, and almost like that's a bad thing that they couldn't move on from this one situation. Right. And it's like, no, you're human. Like, this is, it's amazing you're able to move on from the other things, right?
Right.
And or kind of live your life. So.
Well, and I think just keeping on the workplace, you know how I'm so into the workplace being a healthy environment. And
yes.
I think as managers and supervisors, employers, check in. Just listen. Hey, I know this happened, you know, for you, and how you doing with that?
Yep.
You know, and just listen. You don't have to say anything.
Nope.
And let people know that you care, and let people be able to talk. A lot of times when I listen to people, I try not to say anything and I just listen.
Yes.
And when they get done talking, I'll just say, well, what else, what can I do for you?
Nice.
And a lot of times people will say, a little bit confused, like,
what?
I think you just did it. You know, like,
yes.
I think you just needed to talk about it. And so employers, supervisors, this is imperative. Just be relational and check in.
Yes.
Write a little note saying, hey, thinking of you. If you need anything, my door's open.
Yep. And I think managers and supervisors are afraid to do that because they're worried that it's going to mean they have to fix it. I know when I was a brand new clinic director, I almost didn't want to hear anything at first because it was my anxiety about what if there's a problem I can't solve? I'm supposed to have a solution. But the more I did the management, the more it's like, I just have to listen, like you're saying.
Absolutely.
And people respond so well to that.
So I wanted to throw that in. No extra charge here on things.
That's a freebie,
you can do.
everyone.
Yeah, right. Things in the workplace.
Yeah.
Because we bring our work home, and a lot of times we bring our home to work. And that's okay. We do that because we're human beings.
Yes.
And that means we're emotional and we have things going on. And both at work and at home, let people talk about it. Be available. Don't fix it, like you said.
Right.
Just be available. To listen. And especially if you know if somebody in your office is a caregiver for somebody, is going through a really difficult transition in life.
Yep, exactly. So we're both therapists. We work in a field that has a high rate of burnout, compassion fatigue, et cetera, et cetera. So we were thinking what we should maybe mention, what do we do to help ourselves, because we hear a lot of things all day, but I think it can generalize to this topic. Anyone who needs it can use this kind of input.
Thank you. It does. It applies. What we do for ourselves is so applicable for everybody else.
Right. Even if you're not a therapist, or even if you don't work in the medical, anything, right? Right. You're just dealing with your loved ones, right?
You work a jackhammer all day, and you still got these things
lots
that are bothering you as you go home and care for somebody.
Yep.
So maybe we can talk a little bit about things we do.
Yes.
Just because we know it works for us.
So I guess I can kick us off here. So a big thing for me is having my own therapy. And I want to also say to people listening, you can go to therapy even if you're not the person directly going through an event or a crisis, right? So I've had people say well, so-and-so deserves therapy more than me because they're going through this atrocity or this horrible, their life's falling apart. And I'm just there kind of watching or supporting or whatever. And it's no, you deserve therapy just as much. Because it's almost worse being so powerless, right? So I just want to say that's something that's helped me a lot, and it can help you too. You don't hold yourself back because you think, well, I don't have it as bad as some people, right?
So you're a therapist and you go to therapy?
That's right. It's out there now. Wow. Everyone knows my secret. No, it's not a secret.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that.
No, therapy has helped me more than you would think. Yeah.
I think the best therapists are those who are in therapy.
Right. Because they know what's going on. Right, they know the process. They know how it feels to be on the other end of things,
keep
right?
Working on ourselves. And that is a form of self-care. And when we're talking about how do we help people who are going through crises, we've been talking about boundaries. And we need to have boundaries in place so that we are spending time for self-care. Therapy is self-care. It's a way to take care of yourself. Exercise. Really helpful. I have to work out.
Same.
Just almost every day, just for my mind's sake.
Exactly.
But working out, I also, eating well, sleeping, basic kind of self-care is absolutely crucial because when we're thinking about this, we're getting depleted constantly. And it may not even feel like I'm doing anything. You might have to sit by somebody's hospital bed.
Right.
And that is absolutely exhausting because you're continually looking at this pain of somebody else. You're looking at uncertainty. You're sitting literally in a position of powerlessness, and that is so draining. And so we do these things of self-care simply because we're being depleted.
Yes.
And so if I'm being depleted, I have to do something to replenish myself.
I'm so glad you said that because here again, we get to the thing about when people are in that supporting role or doing the helping and they're like, well, maybe I'm depleted, but look at so-and-so. I think it's again back to that comparison. Exactly. And it's like, no. You have to look at what you're expending here, right? So don't sell yourself short about what you need, right? So yes, all I did was sit at the hospital, but look at what so-and-so's going through. It's like, well, yeah, but you're also doing a lot emotionally and physically just being there, right?
It is. And we cheapen that. We don't realize
that's exactly what
how depleting that actually is.
Yes.
And I'll being a man, I've been a man for 54 years. And I think I can speak with some credibility that at least for my generation growing up, a real man is just going to gut it out.
Sure.
And I would agree. I would just say a really stupid man does that. That's just not smart.
Sure, to not do any caring for yourself.
That's not manly. That's just not smart. It's not wise.
And not sustainable, really, right?
Thank you. It's not sustainable. And it's what's sad about it not being sustainable is then I am depleted. And because I haven't replenished myself, I really don't have anything left to give to this person.
Right.
And so I think all of that self-care, eating, sleeping, exercising, laughing, we were talking about that before we started, or I don't know, maybe you started before I knew. But laughter is super crucial for us. And it can feel like, I see this at funerals too when I was a pastor all the time, like people would almost feel guilty laughing at a funeral.
Yes.
And no, that's cathartic. That's helpful. That's good. Especially laughter replenishes.
Yes. Especially if you're remembering your loved one fondly or something funny that happened. Right. The other thing I was going to say, when you brought up laughter, it made me think of having social connections outside of either work or outside of the crisis that you're supporting. So I think of like my girlfriends, when we get together, we're just goofy, silly and laugh and just whatever. It's like lighthearted. And yes, we can talk about serious things too, but just having ways to connect with other people and kind of fill your cup, so to speak.
I love that. Yeah, it's crucial.
Yes.
And even sometimes with the person we're caring for, just laugh. It can seem that this is all encompassing in this person's life.
Yep.
And by laughing and sort of taking a break, a little vacation from whatever's going on, that's super replenishing.
Yep.
I also think of two other things. One that's real personal to me that I'll share in a moment. But another thing I do is I try to find something I have closure to or completion.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah. It's kind of a love-hate relationship, mowing the lawn and snow blowing. And, I could have my kiddos doing it when I was growing up or when they were growing up, but I like to do it and I couldn't figure out why I like to do it. And it was a sense of completion.
I finished this task.
I did
this thing.
And I could look back, like during our days for us as therapists, it's like, what did I do today? I don't have anything clear and concrete that I can say, hey, I accomplished something.
Sure.
And when we're dealing with and supporting somebody who's going through a chronic crisis, it can feel like nothing productive is ever happening. And that in itself is depleting. There can be a sense of satisfaction when I'm not kidding, I will snow blow even the road in front of my house and do like neighbors and things.
Yes.
Just because I can say, that feels good. Something in my life I can look at and say,
there's a clear
completed.
end point.
Right.
Yes. No, that's really, I like that a lot.
So the last thing I do is, and my faith really informs me of this, and it's super helpful for me, It's very akin to like the 12-step program, the first 2 steps, realize I'm powerless, submit to a higher power.
Yep.
And for me, I start off most of my sessions a certain way because sessions can feel very powerless too. As a therapist, people come in and the worst thing I can do is play the role of being the answer man for their struggles and the chaos and the
trying
pain.
to fix it.
Yeah. And the worst thing I can do is fix it for them because that can be invalidating, cheapen their pain. It creates a dependency on me rather than empowering them to be their best version of themselves. So I say a little prayer and I draw 4 R's on my pad of paper or I type it on my computer. And they stand for realize, release, rest, and rejoice. And I say a little prayer and I just say, Lord Jesus, help me because to realize you're already at work in this person's life.
Yeah.
And help me to release my desire to control this. And help me and I take a deep breath and I say, help me to rest that you're in control of this and I can trust you. And help me just by faith, even though I can't see it in this person's life right now, help me to rejoice that things will work out because you're going to work things out for this person. And so I do. I just pray those things.
Yep.
You know, I realize you're at work. I rely. I think that's it. I rely. I use that too. I rely on your work. I rest and I rejoice in your work in this person's life. Boy, it just takes so much pressure off. And I think for those of us that are trying to care for people, the hardest thing is that sense of ongoing powerlessness, day in, day out. We're witnessing this, and it's so overwhelming, and we can sort of deceive ourselves into thinking that the pressure's on me to make things better. And even the other person isn't expecting us to do that for them, but we'll put it on ourselves.
We will, yes.
And so for me, that prayer really just releases me from all that pressure I put on myself, and it allows me to have a sense of release, rest, rejoicing.
Yes.
Now I can be with this person.
Almost like, I like that image too, because it's almost like you're clearing the slate for the hour, for the person, right?
Right.
And in doing that, you're getting rid of expectations for yourself. You're getting rid of assumptions, right? It's like you're just like putting yourself in this neutral place, which is you're not going in expecting to help. You're not going in expecting to, right? Like you're just like,
I like the way you put that. I'm clearing the slate because that's how I feel is that I'm clearing the slate from all my garbage that I might want to bring in that can be so toxic and unhelpful. Namely, I feel I have to fix this for this person.
Right.
Rather than I'm here to listen and I'm here to empower this person to become their best version of themselves in this situation in their lives. Yep. And that's just it. And sometimes not to cheapen at all what we do, but sometimes that empowerment is just listening and reflecting back so people can see, like, oh, it is a reflection of what's going on in my life. And now I'm starting to see things differently. That is empowering for people to become the best version of themselves.
Yes, I agree. Well, on that note, I think we had some good tidbits today. What do you think?
Well, I think so. And I really hope that people listening have come away with a sense of really believing, you know what, I don't have to be everything all the time for this person. And that that's not selfish. That's just good self-care.
Exactly.
That allows me to keep caring for somebody else. And I think that's our hope and desire. We know what it is to care for people and be concerned for them. And that sense of powerlessness too. Yep. And you want to keep on keeping on. So I hope that people come away really feeling and believing it's okay. And I can do, and I must do some good self-care and maybe find a way to release that pressure that maybe you put on yourself so you can be there for another.
Well, and I was just about to say, a good phrase, like when people don't know what to say to their loved one, it's like someone's going through a crisis and I'm like, well, I don't know what to say. So the tendency is like, sometimes you feel like you just want to say nothing. Right.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you can always say some version of, I love you. How can I help?
Yes.
Right. And if it's not someone that you would say, I love you too, obviously skip that part, but you can say, hey, I care about you. How can I help? And and to your point, before you offer that, it's always okay to say to yourself, okay, I'm about to offer help to this person. What am I honestly willing to do? And ask yourself first, right? Like you were saying, because of course you want to give everything, but it's like, well, maybe the way I help right now is bringing them a meal, right? Or, watching the kids for an hour or whatever, but you don't have to, you can be clear about your own boundaries before you even offer. Does that make sense?
It does, and I'm glad you're bringing this up because that is crucial. What do I say? And I don't know what to say. And part of it, I think, inherent in that is this assumption that somebody's asking me to say anything.
Exactly. Like, what if there's nothing to say?
Right.
What if you just listen?
Yeah, and so just being there and just the presence of being there. I heard a true story of a guy who, I think he lost his wife and child, and so during the funeral, people are all there, and then after the funeral, like people would bring over meals and things. And his best friend never came in, but his friend would park his car across the street from like 7 at night till 10. And he looked out, and he knew his friend was there, and he knew his friend was praying for him all that time. And then his friend would drive away, and he said, just knowing that and having his presence there meant the world. And he didn't say anything.
He didn't say anything.
Yeah. And so please know, if you're there for people who are going through this, your presence, not saying anything, says volumes.
Yes.
And
exactly.
Other things you can say, I would refer people to our episode on validation being a superpower. And there's real phrases we can use to help validate people.
Yes.
And not fix them and invalidate them. And one thing my brother, I've heard him say, and he's a pastor, this resonated with me. I would hear him say, I hate that for you. And it sort of just really would get to my emotion where I was living.
Right.
And we can say that, I hate that this is happening for you. Or just say, this really sucks. This blows.
Right.
Really, it makes sense that you're feeling this way. Don't fix it. Just
don't fix it.
Just be like, don't fix it for them. Feel it with them.
There you go.
And and that is exhausting. So make sure you're taking care of yourself.
Exactly. Proceed with self-care. Proceed with self-care. Is that the title for this episode? I wonder.
We'll find out.
We'll find out. Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining us today and laughing with us, I hope, a little today. And be sure to take good care of yourselves. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you as always for listening, and please be sure to leave us a review. While this podcast can't be a replacement for therapy, we hope you enjoyed our discussion today and join us again next time. Nystrom & Associates is always available to those who are struggling. If you find yourself in need of support and help, please check us out at nystromcounseling.com.